So snaps, right? I'm gonna teach you snaps. When you like something, put your hand up and snap your fingers. It's easier and more energetic for those online to engage in the kind of congratulatory and kind of zeal energy instead of the clapping. So notice the difference in how it looks when you clap versus snap. So practice, put your hands up at there, snap. Lots of people have their videos off. I get it. You might still be in your jammies or bedhead, or because about an hour ago I had a good bedhead going on. I'm Reverend Kelly Isola, and I'll be your flight attendant this morning. I won't be coming down the aisles, but maybe I'll be challenging a little bit of your thinking, or if not challenging, certainly getting you to engage in some I see some faces that I know, and it's wonderful to see them, and new faces. And here's a new little trick. Write a smiley face on your thumb. Okay, share it with everybody, right? Share, share, share. And then I'm going to do one more thing that I want. So this one, I am going to ask you to turn your videos on. One of the things that I've heard for a couple years, and one of the areas of my specialty and expertise is phygital ministry, right? How do we be online and in a digital space and still have connection, right? I hear from many people, it's not the same, and that's correct. It's not the same. If we're expecting it to be, good job, Trish, love it. If we're expecting online to be the same as in person, then of course we're going to be disappointed, because they are different. It's not better or worse, it's different. So here's a way to help us feel a little more connected. Take your hands and make it like, put your hands like you're touching the edge of your box. So you have to see yourself on screen. Where's the little Zoom box you're in? And put your hands on the edge of your box. And then you're kind of like touching hands with whatever little box is next to yours, right? So put your hands like you're touching the person next to you. You have to be able to see. It does, I might be pushing some Zoom skills here, but Marilyn will help you along, as she already has. So just touch the edge of your boxes and see yourself touching the person next to you, and just hold that, right? Just hold that. We have the power of imagination. We have the power of power. We have the power of will. Bring it forward. The more you sit there and just hold that like you're touching the person next to you, you will feel it. I guarantee you. You just have to be in the space and see it and imagine it and know it, right? There's one presence and one power in a lot of different boxes, okay? Yeah, feel it. Thank you, Trish. I'm with you. Okay. Yeah, this and that, or this or that, but this as well as that. Really what I'm talking about is paradox. And we've already experienced it this morning, whether you know it or not, right? We've already experienced it. We may just not be aware of it. And a paradox, when I talk about paradox, or you heard Cheryl mention the polarity thinking, a paradox, a polarity is, in the context that I talk about it and teach it, and how we live in it, is think of them as two truths, two opposite truths that need each other, right? We generally encounter paradox. So another name for paradox is polarity, is conflict, is tension, is dilemma, wicked problem, right? There's all kinds of different words that we can use that are really talking about that tension, right? Anybody have somebody that they bump up against a little bit? Or if you don't, I can give you a couple of mine. You know, the bumping up or tension may be a little, it might be a lot. You know, you may want to take your little thumb and take it away from that person, because they're just, if they would just be different, my life would be easier, right? Anyone have that kind of person you bump into once in a while in your life? Thank you, Roxanne. So I know I'm not alone. Yeah. So, but that's, you know, very often what we think of as conflict, you know, or that tension, we think is a problem. Like there's an either or answer to it. But yet, oftentimes those kinds of things, what we think is a problem, like if I just do this, then everything would be fixed. Especially when it comes to chronic things, especially when it comes to chronic issues, to things that So give me a. I'm going to ask you a question, and you can either put in the chat yes or give me a thumbs up. Doesn't even have to be a smiley face thumbs up. But you ever have an experience where you think, okay, haven't we had this argument before? Haven't we had this conversation before? Why are we revisiting this conversation? Anybody familiar with that? Thank you. Sometimes I need to know I'm not alone. Thank you, Marilyn, if you know how to raise your little thumb. Thank you, Ann and Cheryl. So good to see Ann and Cheryl. I get to see them in SEE classes, but now I get to see them with everyone else. So we have these chronic conversations, right? Whether it's with a family member, it's in church, it's a spouse. I had them regularly with my former husband, where I would go, didn't we have this conversation before? Like, why? I thought we settled this. Why are we doing this, right? And more often than not, it's because there's this energy of a paradox that's at work, right? And we're trying to think of, there's a solution, there's an either or to this problem. We think it's a problem, but it's not. It's really a paradox. And the irony of a paradox, of a polarity, of that kind of tension or dilemma, is that it's unsolvable and it's eternal. And who amongst us likes to have tension inside? Yeah, everybody's fingers come down now, right? Who enjoys that when we bump up against that tension that just is unsolvable, it's eternal, it's unbreakable, it's a constant. And the irony of it is that it's a necessary part of our journey, that tension, right? In that tension is our growth. In that tension is something new that's waiting to be birthed. We've just been taught in our Western culture that we need to get rid of that tension, that the tension is bad, that something must be wrong if there's this rub, right? I use the quote in the description for the talk that it's one of the ways that we get stuck in our differences is, okay, we use the term my truth, right? Well, my truth is, and then you have your truth, and never the twain shall meet. And it just doesn't, life isn't quite that simple. So when I say this or that as well as that and this, some things are either or. Do we want Chinese food tonight, or do you want me to cook spaghetti? Right? There is a kind of thing there. But what about something like, which is better, activity or rest? Which is better, inhaling or exhaling? Which is better, being contemplative or being in service? Right? Which is better, the immanent nature of God or the transcendent nature of God? And all of those are, some of you are nodding your head. So, and I'm not sure which one you're nodding your head at, but all of those last set of questions, the answer to all of those, this or this, was because we need them both. We need them both. They're seemingly opposite, but they're what we call interdependent. And the quote that I used in the description of the service is our ability to do the work that in due season will encircle the earth. Right? That's the work that we do, the work that in due season will encircle the earth. Well, I think we've pretty well encircled the earth. I'm sitting outside, I'm sitting on the land formerly the home of the indigenous Osage and Missouri nations, First Peoples here in the United States, and I'm visiting you in my own ancestral land of the Anishinaabe. And last week I was on Zoom 2 weeks ago, in a church that's in their home base is in Connecticut, and yet there was a regular attendee from Pakistan who now I'm chatting with in WhatsApp, and just like that, before you know it, we have encircled the earth. But in order to encircle the earth, it depends on us moving beyond some basic assumptions. It requires us to look at what we think, right? To question, why ruin a good question with an answer? like to look at what we believe, the assumptions that we have, and be willing to question them, be willing to move into a both and, be willing to be uncomfortable, and to be in the tension. And one of the things that that often that I notice so I've spent the last 15 years wandering around the globe with Unity churches. And one of the things that keeps, and it's not just in Unity, it's most faith-based organizations, what keeps us stuck is having to learn the difference between, we have beliefs that we hold firmly onto, and we have to discern between the difference between deeply held beliefs and rigidly held beliefs. And it requires us to kind of pause and to be still. Oftentimes the rigidly held beliefs are louder. They can separate us. Sometimes that's where we kind of can get ugly about it or get angry about our differences. Whereas deeply held beliefs will serve, they will heal. They're always tempered by the power of love. And so deeply held beliefs can have more of we can hold those beliefs deeply without having to be rigid. So that's the very nature of, the title when I say this and that, or, as well as that and this, is learning to hold deeply held beliefs, but not hold them rigidly. There's something that's called the Rule of Benedict, and it comes from Saint Benedict. And it's a question that is, am I willing to be changed by what I'm hearing? Am I willing to be changed by what I'm seeing? It doesn't mean I have to change my mind. It means, am I willing to be changed? And it's a radical question, because it's like, but this is what I'm holding dear to me, right? This is what's really important for me. And the other person is saying something that I don't agree with, I'm not familiar with, it feels uncomfortable, and yet the walk into it, to engage it, right, is to say, am I willing to be changed by this? You can tell if a belief you have is rigid by how hard you push against, no, I'm good, I'm all set, don't be messing with my Jesus, right? Like, I got it, I'm solid, I'm good, don't be messing, right? So one of the places that I like to go is when I talk about this topic and this, the interdependence really is what it's about. We use the word interdependence quite a bit in Unity circles, and and I think, many people have a cognitive understanding of it. But to have an embodied experience of interdependence requires me to let go of some things that I hold very strong. And by let go, I don't mean change my mind. I mean, am I willing to be changed by what I hear? Interdependence means I need you for me, and you need me for you. So, have you ever tried, anybody, I'm going to need another show of hands or type the yes in the chat or something. Uh, Ever tried to make changes to the order of service in your church? Anyone? So a couple people are laughing, so I'm going to take the laughing as a yes. Yep. And ever have some difficulty? Like, hey, what happened to the fill in the blank, whether it's a song or a prayer or a particular reading? Yep. And that's an example of what is a paradox, of a this and a that, right? And what I mean by that is that there's values that are bumping up against each other. This is where, and we're going to take a deeper dive in February into this, where what makes them interdependent is that they're opposite values, like activity and rest, the immanent nature of God, the transcendent nature of God, a contemplative, way of being, and service action way of being, even the idea of doing and being, right? Which one is better? They're all values that bump up against each other, that are basically opposite, and yet need each other for the wholeness of the person, for the wholeness of the organism, for the wholeness of an experience. So let me come back to one in particular, right? You'll have to forgive me. I'm a little bit disoriented because I have COVID, and it's been about 2.5 weeks, and I'm still can hear a little nasally. But this is actually this morning the best I've been in 2.5 weeks. So I might wander a little bit, but hey, wouldn't be a good paradox if I didn't wander aimlessly and have a straight and narrow once in a while, right? But even that, right? Think about your own experiences with people where there is the idea of structure, right? And order, and I even got an email with an Excel spreadsheet that gives me the order of service, right? And so there's some order there, right? There's some structure there. And then there's the other, and you may be one of these people that you have, and neither one's right, neither one's wrong. Keep that in mind. It's not a better than, neither one. Which one's better? Yes, keep that in mind. When I say which one's better, the answer is always, So there's some people that just naturally have a center of gravity around structure and order, and love Excel spreadsheets, or anything that gives that kind of order to things, right? And lists. And then you might be one of those kind of people, and thank God, because I need you in my life. There's some of us that have more of a center of gravity around flexible and organic, and kind of some innovation, and the changing things like that. Oh, I get it. There's a spreadsheet, but let's take this out and put that in. And everyone that sort of has a sense of security around this order of service goes, no, wait, right? Like you can feel the tension rising. Wait, you made a last minute change. You can't do that. I was ready for that, And those of us that kind of have a center of gravity around being flexible and organic, we kind of go, okay, you got me in a box, right? There's these boxes, these lines and boxes in Excel, and they're color coordinated and how pretty, and you're killing me, Smalls, right? Because we have a center of gravity that's just different, right? And so you see how they're opposite, but you need them both, right? We need them both for the wholeness of just a Sunday service, for really the richness of a Sunday service. So there we have this, this order of service, etc. But then sometimes we run amok a little bit within it, right? Maybe flip the order of something, or you don't have so there's both, and we need them both. Where we get into trouble, where it's harder to really do, as Charles says, to the work that in due season will encircle the earth. And the work that will encircle the earth is whatever your mission is, individually and collectively. So the more that we can engage and see the value of each, and we're going to do a deeper dive in February into that practice, the more you encompass and connect the power of those differences. Because there's great power in having some structure, right? So somebody, you can unmute and shout or type it in the chat, but when you think about, structure and order and, a planning, what's some of the, the positive outcomes of that? Like, what is it that the positive things, when we focus on structure and order, what are some of the positive outcomes of that? This is where you're allowed to unmute, even though they told you at the beginning. See, here's one of those structure flexibility things.
Things can go smoother.
Yep, things can go smoother. Yep, Stephen writes integrity, achievement. Yep.
Being prepared.
Being prepared. And what did you say, Trish?
I forget.
Okay.
More predictability.
Yes, more predictability. Yep. Marilyn writes good outcomes with everyone on the same page. Yep.
Security, more security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all know that. We all know these. Anyone ever experienced, though, overboard structure? Like you start to feel like you're in a box. So too much structure gives us what?
Stress.
What was that?
Stress.
Stress. Yeah. What else?
Rigidity.
Rigidity. Yep. Yep.
No room for spontaneity and creativity.
Yep. Rebellion. Yes. I can't take it anymore. Ah! Yes. Can be suffocating. Totally.
Confusion.
Yep. Confusion. Yep. Yep. So that's but yet you can see there's value in that, right? It's a value of structure, of order, whatever word we want to use. And the opposite is that flexible, organic, right? Kind of innovative, doesn't really have clear sides to it, right? What's the benefit of that? What do we value about that? Same thing, you can unmute yourself.
Creativity.
There's creativity in it. Yep.
Growth.
Yep. Leverage last minute opportunities.
You can develop growth potentially.
Absolutely. Self-expression, totally. Growth opportunities, yeah. Open
Feeling
minds to listen and learn. Yeah, Brenda. I'm going to assume, Brenda, your center of gravity is like mine. It's kind of the flex flow. It feels better. It has this sense of freedom with it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get how they're opposite, but look how they need each other. You can see how they need each other for the wholeness of this Sunday experience, having structure and order, and yet having flexibility and organic, right? You stick me into any mix and you're going to get an organic voice in there, but within the context of this order of service, right? Yes, exercise the trust muscle, totally. So if you find yourself leaning, one of them feels more comfortable than the other, it's just your center of gravity. It doesn't matter which one it is. It's just knowing it. It's just being able to see it. And when we do that, then we're more likely to have that wholeness, that sense of what that word that we use in Unity that we love, oneness, right? How many times do we hear the word oneness? And do we actually know what it means? And is there really this sense of paradox within oneness? Aren't we shooting for, isn't our work, our spiritual growth and our development to this idea of oneness? Well, here's the good news and the bad news. The good news is yes, and the bad news is no, but it depends how you define oneness, right? If oneness is an idea in consciousness, right? Oneness is an idea in consciousness, and yet we live out oneness here in our relative world in very different ways, right? We live out that idea of oneness that we hold in consciousness, and I'm not sure whose definition we're using. So someone, there's a lot of definitions, but what I know about, for me, the idea of oneness is something that we hold in consciousness. If you Google the word oneness, like the last time I Googled it, I got over 18 million hits. So I think there's a little bit of conversation and discussion and viewpoints and perspectives around oneness. And here's the funny part. Totally threw me for a loop. Get 18 million hits of oneness, and the first one on that list was about Nike's Oneness Sneaker Boutique. Nike's Oneness Sneaker Boutique. So we see sneakers top the chart around oneness. I don't know what that's all about, but I thought that was pretty funny. So if I wanted to get knocked down a couple notches of my spirituality white tower pedestal, it was a good way to do it. Nike outranks whatever I was thinking. But it was just sort of, I thought it was fun because in my mind, I'm thinking oneness and spirituality and, the interconnectedness of all life. And what comes up? Nike sneakers. Whoosh, okay. It doesn't mean anything other than what meaning I give it, but it was, I just thought it was fascinating. In Unity, we use the word oneness to talk about harmony, to talk about wholeness, non-dual awareness, Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, all of these words that are about the one presence and one power. Charles Fillmore says, co-founder of Unity, says that oneness is an experience that transcends the mind. So it is about consciousness. But what does it look like? right? What what does oneness really mean here in this lived experience? And this is where this is a wonderful place to start the conversation of, well, this or that, but it is this and that. Because we're pulling from different life experiences here in the relative world. It's a creative life force that moves through each of us differently, right? It's what is it, what do I know about it? And what does it mean for me? And how do I express it? And, am I looking for it? And the interesting part about it is that that oneness, that fulfillment of oneness that we hold in consciousness, that we express through our humanity, is really a practice of being intimate with each other, of taking care of humanity, of taking care of life, which is being vulnerable and being intimate. The irony is that intimacy is about proximity, right? So I can't know intimacy with another human being unless I can see us as, that we're different, that we're separate. So it's a huge, so if I haven't already confused you, maybe that did, maybe that helped. But I just wanted to, I'm just sort of dropping some things into our space this morning about the idea of either or as well as both and. Because this is where this is really the world that we live in. When we think that something is either or, more than likely it's a both and, right? Which is better, to understand something or to accept it? Well, yes, but we confuse them as though I need to be, I can be accepting without understanding of something, and I can be understanding without accepting. So how do I live them both? Right? Justice and mercy, right? How do I live them both? And that's what this journey is about for me. That's if I want to, stay with the idea of oneness, because that power of oneness, that idea of oneness, that virtue of oneness that I bring from consciousness into the relative world, is me being receptive, is me being open, is me, a shared humanity, which means I have to be willing to try on what's different. I have to be willing to be in the tension of, oh, don't go messing with my order of service. Don't, that when I have a sense of safety and security with structure and order, how do I, practice being in the tension when it gets a little looser, when one of these people like me comes along and just disrupts, and how do I engage that? And can I see what the value is underneath that activity of flexibility and creativity? And can I connect with that, this and that, and see more of a whole picture? So I think I'm going to leave it at that, and move us into a meditation. So if you're comfortable and you want to close your outer eyes, you could do that, or you can leave them open. And just maybe lower your gaze. Have a soft gaze on something in front of you. Take a deep breath, a big inhale, and then a big exhale. And another inhale. And an exhale. Part of this journey of thinking about the differences, our differences, when we bump up against each other, when it seems we have different values, different beliefs, we may be inches apart or we may be hundreds of miles apart. remember that we either learn as a species to live well with each other, or we die trying. So this journey of the either or, of the both and, is about learning to live well with each other. Which doesn't mean I always understand. Perhaps it means I'm willing to try on what's uncomfortable, to try on what's not familiar, to try on what maybe I don't even believe, but you hold dearly. So often when we are met with different, we may feel afraid or unsure, or not have a sense of security or groundedness. So remember that there is a place where you turn for rest, where you turn for release from the fear and enter into care. It is that holy place of stillness. It is your fundamental nature. For it is in this place where your thoughts, where your feelings, when we breathe and settle into that space, the outside world disappears for a moment. And our breath and our mind and our body is stilled, is refreshed, is restored. This place is not far away. It's right where you are. So pause and breathe deeply again. That breath is the presence of life, the presence of love, generosity. With the next breath, scan your interior. See if there's any place of contraction, any place of tension. And give that place tenderness. Offer yourself grace and tenderness. Just take a moment to continue to scan your interior, and when you find a place that may be a little closed down, a little contracted or unsure, maybe some physical pain, direct the power of tenderness. Direct the power of life and love right now. Let's hold that in the stillness. And as we bring our attention back to our breath, we silently say to ourselves, I am dear to me. I hold myself in my heart. I care for me. And then we silently affirm, you are all dear to me. I hold you in my heart. I care for you. And we declare this and we affirm this and we know this to be so. And so it is. And so it is. Amen.